Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So in this video I'd like to introduce you to the Paranoid Delusion companion and whether it's actually decent as a single target summoned companion. Now I'm going to go over through the perspective of a rogue and what kind of damage it does. This Paranoid Delusion is very unique to each class that summons it, since it will take on your form. As we can see, now it pretty much looks identical to me, just a little more purpley glowy, I guess. And we can see when we look at its powers, it will manifest itself into its master's image, and it will do, as we can see here with the mimic, attacks with an at-will power that varies depending on the master's class. So as the Paranoid Delusion on a rogue, we can see that it actually mirrors the duelist at-will that we have here, Duelist Flurry. We can see it does the exact same animation. Now unfortunately, as when we look over the dummy, we can actually see it does put the bleed effect on the dummy, if we can get that highlighted. There we go. We can see it does have the bleed effect, but unfortunately it doesn't actually get any extra bleed damage. It would be pretty powerful if it did. But even with that said, the amount of damage that Duelist Flurry can rack up can be a significant amount, especially on the amount of magnitude it does. And with this companion, it can rack up a significant amount of damage. Now that is not the main unique thing to this companion. There's one big factor that this companion can be rated as better than any other companion basically. And the reason being is you don't need to run with Indomitable Runestones whatsoever to buff this companion's damage. Nothing except your own stats will affect this companion. Therefore, I can go and easily slot out these Indomitable Runestones, if we have enough gold to do so, and for example, slot in Recondite Runestones to give me accuracy where my build is lacking in such stat. When I have myself fully buffed up with the certain foods and things, and I have the procs from the Gristro Horns and the Bone Devil's Ribcage, along with the Lion Guard's Raid Gloves, we have our stats at pretty much 90% power, 90% combat advantage, 9% critical strike, and critical severity. And we're just lacking on accuracy. And with running with a companion like the Paranoid Delusion, who doesn't need these Indomitable Runestones, we can switch to, yes, as I mentioned, the Recondites. Now the drawback is that enchantments in general and these runestones really don't give much in the way of statistics. We can see that a runestone, when we switch out another one of these Indomitables, will give us a total of only 600 of a stat. Now looking at these ratings, each 1000 of a rating will give you 1%, and 600, that's 0.6%. So with switching out all of our Indomitables, that's 6 runestones, that's the equivalent of 3600 ratings, which is only 3.6%. If you consider the fact that depending on which stat you're buffing, if we're only buffing accuracy, it won't give a whole lot of extra damage, but we could say it's going to roughly give us about 2% increase in our overall damage. Let's say we can deal about 200,000 encounter DPS, damage per second. I'm pretty sure I can confidently do so with having combat advantage and just using my own buffs and having all my procs off with my certain enchantments and so on and so forth, and we can get to up to about 200,000 encounter DPS. Right, so 2% of that would be another 10,000 encounter DPS. That's not bad at all things considered. And if you look at buffing that then with artifacts from other party members, that could be a significant amount. But again, it's only 2%, so is this really going to matter? How much damage can this Paranoid Delusion do, at least on a rogue, with the Duelist Flurry at will? Well, when we go and look at it, we got our Paranoid Delusion to do just over 31,000 encounter DPS. And this was with the Indomitable Runestones. So we had 6 of those Indomitable Runestones, and this is the encounter DPS. Then I went and, just like I did before, switched them all out to now have Recondite Runestones, giving me accuracy, and this actually increases the companion's damage as well as mine, as we can see by it giving a slight increase to encounter DPS there of 31,500. Now these tests aren't particularly long. You can see it's 20 minutes on the one with the Indomitables, and it was nearly 30 minutes with the one on the Recondites. But that said, these are kind of rough estimates as what you would expect, and this is with my build with having these statistics. You consider when I'm fully buffed up, my power's at 90, so is my combat advantage, crit strike and crit severity, with my accuracy at just around 62% there when we use like our watermelon sorbet, as you can see there, and we buff up our crit sev with these ones and some more critical strike there. With that said, that means we're gaining a little bit of a buff to our companion just because we're using these runestones, giving us these extra stats, along with giving us a little bit of buff to our own damage because we don't have to sacrifice it by using these Indomitable Runestones. Now, the drawback on all of this is, yeah, the Paranoid Delusion is only going to be good for single target, since she's only copying our at will, which is Duelist Flurry, which is single target. So jumping into an AoE fight, you would then want to switch out to something like Xuna, where she would excel in AoE. And then, without having these Indomitable Runestones, you're really going to suffer, because normal companions, which need Indomitable Runestones, do like less than half their damage value without them. So the viability of using the Paranoid Delusion and then not having Indomitable Runestones, in my opinion, is just not worth it. The amount you gain from having these Runestones really isn't much of a significant amount. Again, it's only 3.6% of a rating. So yeah, you take it or leave it. In my opinion, Paranoid Delusion, just not worth it for me on a rogue. You could run with something like the Cold Iron Warrior and gain better results in encounter DPS on the long term. You can see here with the Cold Iron Warrior, it was doing a good bit more damage than the Paranoid Delusion at 35,500 encounter DPS. Now, other companions that are pretty close to the Cold Iron Warrior are Xuna, where we did get a value on her at just over 28,700 encounter DPS, so she wasn't performing too well. There are a few others there, but all things considered, you would be better off just running the Cold Iron Warrior than the Paranoid Delusion, and the Cold Iron Warrior you would then run with those Indomitable Runestones, or he just really suffer in terms of dealing damage. So yeah, unfortunately, the Paranoid Delusion nowhere near going to be worth the cost it is right now. It's like 12 million, I believe, on PC. But with that said, it is unique in terms of not needing Indomitable Runestones. So if you've got one lying around, you may as well summon your Paranoid Delusion, and you don't then have to worry about having those Indomitables. At least I would run the Paranoid Delusion on single target, that's for sure, and that's generally where it all really matters most of the time, with those DPS checks. So hopefully this was somewhat insightful to you guys. If it was, consider leaving the video a like, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.